It hurts too much. She yelled at the Mafia boss. He made every abuser in town vanish. The night Kira Ross screamed at a wife beater in the ER, she didn't know Brooklyn's deadliest man was listening. 24 hours later, that wife beater was gone. 48 hours later, 6 more abusers vanished. By the end of the week, every coward in Brooklyn who raised his fists to someone weaker was looking over his shoulder. Because Riker Cross had just found a new hobby, and it was cleaner than the streets had been in decades. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this story is about to go somewhere brutal and beautiful.
The clock on the wall read 2:47 a.m. when Jenna walked through the automatic doors, and Kira Ross knew exactly what she was looking at. 4 years of night shifts had given her a sixth sense for these cases. The careful way Jenna held her arm, the swollen jaw she tried to hide with her hair, the dead look in her eyes that said she'd already practiced her lies in the cab ride over. Behind her, 10 steps back, but always watching, came Marcus. 6 feet of muscle and arrogance in a tank top, scrolling through his phone like he was waiting for an oil change, instead of making sure his girlfriend didn't tell the truth about who'd rearranged her face. Kira was 31, running on coffee and something darker than exhaustion. She'd become a nurse to save people. For years later, she knew better. The system was a joke. Men like Marcus walked free while their victims apologized for bleeding. Name? Kira asked, voice professionally neutral even as her hands shook. Jenna Mitchell. I fell. The words came out slurred through the swelling. Kitchen counter. Slipped on some water. Kira wrote it down because protocol demanded it, even though every cell in her body was screaming. She'd heard this story 100 times. Different actresses, same script, same ending. Let's get you into exam room 3. Across the waiting room, Riker Cross was bleeding through his shirt and pretending not to notice. He'd taken a knife to the ribs 3 hours ago during a collection job that went sideways. It wasn't serious, but his second-in-command Fletcher had insisted he get stitches before infection became a problem. So here he sat, watching a woman lie about her injuries while her abuser made sure she stuck to the script. Riker was 38, had built an empire on understanding that power came from being willing to do what others wouldn't. But there was violence that served a purpose. And then there was this, a coward beating someone who couldn't fight back, then sitting there smiling like he'd accomplished something. In exam room 3, Kira worked with practiced efficiency. Jaw's broken. We'll need to wire it shut. The arm's fractured in 2 places. You'll need a cast for 6 weeks. She kept her voice gentle. Jenna, did someone do this to you? No, I fell. Kitchen counters don't usually punch people twice in the same spot hard enough to fracture bone. Kira gripped her clipboard until her knuckles went white. And they don't leave finger-shaped bruises that match a man's hand. Jenna's eyes filled with tears. For a moment, Kira thought she might break. Then Jenna glanced toward the waiting room, and the moment died. I fell. Can you just fix it? 90 minutes later, Jenna was bandaged, medicated, her jaw wired shut, and arm casted. She could barely speak, couldn't eat solid food, would spend 6 weeks in pain. And she would go home with the man who'd caused it. Kira walked her back to the waiting room, where Marcus immediately stood, all-concerned boyfriend now. Baby, are you okay? Broken jaw, fractured arm, Kira said flatly. She needs rest. No stress, no situations that might cause additional trauma. Marcus laughed, already guiding Jenna toward the exit. Don't worry, I'll take real good care of her. Something inside Kira shattered. Maybe it was 4 years of watching the scene play out. Maybe it was her mother's ghost. The funeral when Kira was 17, her father explaining how tragic it was that she'd fallen down the stairs. Maybe it was just exhaustion and rage finally breaking through. IT hurts too much. The scream echoed through the entire ER. Everyone froze. It hurts to watch you smile while she can't even open her mouth. It hurts to know I'm sending her home with you, and tomorrow she'll be back here, or she'll be dead. It hurts that I have to write down her lies because the system protects pieces of shit like you instead of the people you destroy. Marcus's smile vanished. Lady, you need to calm down. I know what you did. Everyone knows what you did. And you'll walk out and do it again because that's what cowards do. You hit people who can't hit back and the world just lets you. Security moved toward her. Her supervisor rushed over, face red. Marcus backed away, hands up, playing victim. This is crazy. I'm calling my lawyer. Get out, Kira said, voice dropping to something cold and deadly. Get out before I forget. I took an oath to do no harm. That's when Riker Cross stood up. The way he moved made everyone instinctively step back. No hurry, no obvious threat, but danger rolled off him like heat from asphalt. He stopped in front of Marcus. She told you to leave. Marcus tried his tough guy routine. Who the hell are you? Riker moved fast. One moment Marcus was talking. The next he was on his knees, hand bent wrong, 2 fingers definitely broken. Funny how much it hurts when someone bigger decides to break things, Riker said conversationally. You have 2 choices. Leave now and disappear from her life permanently. Or I show you exactly how much pain a body can take before it stops working. Marcus was crying now. Okay, let go. Riker released him. Marcus ran, out the doors into the night. Riker turned to Jenna, voice gentler now. Do you have somewhere safe? She shook her head, tears streaming. He handed her a plain white card with just a phone number. Call this within the hour. Someone will pick you up. You'll have a place to stay where he can't find you. Safe, secure, free. Just call. He turned to leave, then looked at Kira, who was shaking, her supervisor clearly about to fire her. Their eyes met, recognition of kindred rage, of people who'd seen too much and decided to act. You meant that, Riker said. What you said. Kira nodded. Good. He walked toward the exit, paused. How many women like her do you see every week? Too many. Riker smiled without warmth. What if they stopped coming? Before she could answer, he was gone. Kira stood there, career probably over, hands shaking, watching Jenna clutch that card like a lifeline. Her supervisor was yelling, threatening termination. But Kira barely heard it. For the first time in 4 years, she felt something other than helpless rage. She felt hope. Kira got home at 7 in the morning with a written warning in her bag and a phone number she couldn't stop thinking about. Her supervisor had screamed for 20 minutes about professionalism and liability and how lucky she was to still have a job. The hospital's legal team would be reviewing the incident. Code 4. One more outburst and you're done. She didn't care. She dropped her keys on the kitchen counter of her studio apartment, too wired to sleep despite the exhaustion pulling at her bones. The news played on her laptop. Local station, morning broadcast, the kind of background noise that usually helped her brain shut down. She was making coffee when the anchor's voice changed tone, shifting from traffic reports to breaking news. Developing story out of Flatbush this morning. Police are investigating the death of 29-year-old Marcus Webb, found deceased in his apartment around 5 a.m. Early reports suggest suicide, but investigators say the scene raises questions. Webb's girlfriend reported him missing last night after he failed to return home from the hospital where she was being treated for injuries. Kira's hand froze on the coffee pot. The screen showed Marcus's apartment building, police tape across the door, neighbors being interviewed. The same Marcus who'd been smiling in her ER 6 hours ago. The same Marcus who'd run out with broken fingers and terror in his eyes. Dead. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. She stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Hello. He won't hurt anyone again. The voice was male, calm, unfamiliar. How many more? Kira's breath caught. She should hang up. Should call the police. Should do anything except what she did next, which was ask, who is this? Someone who listens when people say things hurt too much. A pause. You see them every week. Women like Jenna. How many? Her mind raced through the past month alone. Sarah, with the fractured ribs her husband gave her for burning dinner. Amanda, whose boyfriend put cigarettes out on her back. Lisa, who came in every few weeks with new injuries and new excuses. Too many, she whispered. Then help me stop it. You killed him. She should sound horrified. She sounded curious. I removed a problem. There's a difference. The voice never changed tone, stayed conversational, almost casual. You could delete this number and forget we talked. Go back to patching people up and watching them go home to the same violence. Or you can send me names when you see them. Men who hurt people weaker than them. I'll make sure they stop. That's not. Kira stopped. Not what? Not legal? Not moral? not the system working the way it was supposed to. She'd watched the system fail for 4 years, watched women die because restraining orders were just paper, watched children grow up in homes where violence was the language everyone spoke. "You have until tonight," the voice said. "If you want to continue, send me the next name. If not, we never spoke." The line went dead. Kira stood in her kitchen, coffee forgotten, staring at her phone. Marcus was dead, probably murdered, and she was holding the number of whoever did it. The right thing to do was obvious. Call Detective Chun, the cop who'd taken her statement years ago when her mother died. Turn over the number. Let the law handle it. Instead, she opened her laptop and pulled up her patient files from the past week. 3 more women. 3 more cases of "I fell" and "I'm so clumsy," while their partners sat in the waiting room, making sure the lies stayed consistent. She documented everything. Photos of injuries, descriptions that carefully noted the patterns that screamed abuse. Evidence that would sit in a file somewhere while the violence continued. Her hands hovered over the keyboard. This was insane. This was conspiracy to murder. This was everything she'd been taught was wrong. This was also the only thing that had actually worked. At 11 p.m., after sleeping 4 hours and waking up to the same thoughts on loop, Kira opened her phone. She typed 3 names, 3 addresses, 3 men who would probably kill their partners within the year if nothing changed. Her thumb hovered over send for a full minute. She thought about Jenna's wired jaw, about her mother's funeral, about every woman she'd stitched back together just to send them home to more pain. She hit send. The response came back in seconds. Received. That was it. No confirmation, no questions, just acknowledgement. Kira deleted the conversation and went to take a shower, scrubbing her skin until it was raw, trying to wash off the feeling that she'd just crossed a line she could never uncross. Over the next 48 hours, she watched the news obsessively between shifts. At first, nothing. Then small stories started appearing. David Chun, arrested on outstanding warrants after a routine traffic stop that found drugs in his car. Brian Foster, who suddenly quit his job and left town, his girlfriend reporting that he'd said something about starting over in Texas. Marcus Webb's death was ruled suspicious but inconclusive, investigation ongoing. The third name, Justin Park, was the one that made Kira's hands shake. He didn't disappear or get arrested. He came into the ER 2 nights later with a dislocated shoulder and a story about mugging. But his eyes told a different story, pure animal fear. He kept looking over his shoulder, flinching at shadows. When Kira treated him, he grabbed her wrist. "Tell them I'm done," he whispered. "Please, tell them I'll leave. I'll never touch her again. Just tell them to stop." Kira pulled her wrist free. "I don't know what you're talking about." But she did. And when Justin checked himself out against medical advice and left Brooklyn that night, she knew exactly why. It was working. 3 weeks into her new arrangement with the phantom voice on her phone, Kira had sent 12 names. 12 men who'd sent women to her ER with injuries that made her want to scream. Some were arrested on convenient charges. Some left town voluntarily after receiving visits from people who made it clear that staying was a health hazard. One, a particularly violent case who'd hospitalized his girlfriend 3 times in 6 months, simply vanished, his apartment cleaned out overnight. Kira told herself she was just providing information. What happened after wasn't her responsibility. It was a lie that let her sleep at night, barely. Then Jenna came back for a follow-up appointment. Her jaw was healing. The cast would come off in 3 more weeks. But more than that, she looked different, lighter. She smiled, carefully around the wire but genuine. When Kira asked how she was doing, Jenna started crying. "I'm staying with my sister in Queens. I got a job at a bookstore. Marcus is gone. I don't know where and I don't care. For the first time in 3 years, I'm not afraid to fall asleep." She grabbed Kira's hands. "Thank you. I don't know what you said to that man in the ER, but whatever happened after, thank you." That's when Detective Sarah Chun walked into the exam room. "Ms. Ross, I need a moment of your time." Chun was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that made guilty people confess just from proximity. She nodded at Jenna. Privately, if possible. Kira's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. They'd connected the dots. She was in a jail. She finished with Jenna quickly and followed Chun to an empty consultation room, her mind already racing through what she'd say, how she'd explain. Chun closed the door and pulled out a folder. Inside were photos. Marcus Webb's apartment, David Chun being arrested, Justin Park's panic face on hospital security footage. A map of Brooklyn with red pins marking locations, all connected by string to one central question mark. 8 men, Chun said quietly, in 3 weeks, all with documented histories of domestic violence. All suddenly gone, arrested, or scared enough to leave town. She looked up at Kira. You've treated victims connected to 6 of these men. That's one hell of a coincidence. Kira's mouth was dry. I treat a lot of patients. I'm sure you do. Chun leaned back, studying her. Here's what I know. Marcus Webb's death scene was staged to look like suicide, but the angles were wrong. Someone with professional training made it look amateur on purpose. David Chin's drug bust. The cocaine was planted. Wrong packaging for street dealers. Too pure. Justin Park was visited by at least 3 men who threatened him with details about his daily routine that would require surveillance. This isn't random. This is organized. Then why are you talking to me instead of investigating? Chun was quiet for a long moment. Because 15 years ago, my best friend was murdered by her ex-boyfriend. He'd been arrested 4 times for assaulting her. 4 times, and every time the charges were dropped or pled down. The 5th time he killed her. Beat her to death in her own apartment while I was 3 blocks away at my promotion ceremony, celebrating becoming a detective. Kira's breath caught. I became a detective to stop men like him. I've spent 15 years watching the system fail over and over. Restraining orders that aren't worth the paper they're printed on. Prosecutors who won't press charges without perfect evidence. Judges who give suspended sentences because he has a job and he seems remorseful. Chin's voice was tight with old anger. So, I'm going to ask you one question, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. What question? Should I be trying to stop what's happening? Or should I be looking the other way? The room was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sounds of the hospital. Kira looked at the detective, saw the same exhaustion and rage she felt every time she sent another battered woman home to her abuser. What if I told you I don't know what you're talking about? Chun smiled, grim and knowing. Then I'd say keep up the good work, Nurse Ross. And if you happen to notice any patterns in your patients, feel free to keep detailed records. You never know when documentation might be useful. She stood, gathered her folder, and headed for the door. Then stopped and turned back. One more thing. There's a case coming through. Judge Raymond Pierce. Family court. His wife Catherine came through your ER last week with a broken wrist and a story about tripping on the stairs. I remember. Pierce has been on my radar for months. He's not just abusive. He's been using his position to protect other abusers. Dismissing restraining orders, giving custody to violent parents, destroying women who try to fight back in his courtroom. Chin's expression was stone. But he's a judge. He has protections, connections, power that makes him effectively untouchable through normal channels. Why are you telling me this? Because normal channels don't seem to be working lately. And I thought you should know that some cases require special attention. Chin opened the door. Have a good night, Nurse Ross. Stay safe. She left. Kira stood alone in the consultation room, her mind reeling. A detective had just told her to continue, had given her a target, had made it clear that whatever was happening, it had at least one person in law enforcement who wouldn't interfere. Her phone buzzed. The unknown number. The detective? Kira typed back. Not a problem. She's sympathetic. Good. We may need her eventually. Kira hesitated, then typed, Judge Raymond Pierce. His wife is our patient. The response took longer this time. When it came, it was just 2 words, I know. Riker Cross sat in his office on the 14th floor of a building he owned through 3 shell companies, staring at a file that had been growing thicker for the past 2 weeks. Judge Raymond Pierce, 53 years old, appointed to family court 8 years ago, reputation spotless. On paper, he was a champion for families, an advocate for children, a man who took domestic violence seriously in his courtroom. The reality was different. Riker's people had been digging since Kira sent Pierce's name, and what they'd found made even him angry. Pierce didn't just abuse his wife, Catherine. He weaponized his position to help other abusers. Restraining orders dismissed on technicalities. Custody awarded to violent fathers. Women who fought back in his courtroom destroyed through legal manipulation. And he did it all while accepting bribes from men who wanted their victims silenced. Fletcher walked in without knocking, dropping another folder on the desk. "You're not going to like this. Tell me." Pierce has friends. Real friends. 3 senators, the police commissioner, half the appellate court. You go after him the way we've been handling the others, and we'll have federal attention within 24 hours. Fletcher leaned against the desk. This isn't some random abuser. This is a man with power. Which is exactly why he needs to be stopped. Boss, I get it. But we have operations to protect. People who depend on us. You start a war with a judge. You risk everything we've built. Riker looked at the photo clipped to the file. Catherine Pierce, 41, former attorney who'd given up her career when she married. The hospital photos showed a broken wrist, bruised ribs, cigarette burns on her back. The pattern went back years. She tried to leave twice. Both times, Pierce had used his connections to make her life impossible. Frozen bank accounts. Threats to have her declared unfit. Friends and family who stopped taking her calls after Pierce made quiet visits. How many women has he helped destroy? Riker asked. Fletcher sighed. Based on court records? At least 40 cases where he ruled against domestic violence victims in ways that don't make legal sense. Could be more. And his wife? She's terrified. Our contact says Catherine won't testify even if we give her protection. She knows what he's capable of. Riker stood and walked to the window, looking out at Brooklyn spread below him like a kingdom he'd conquered through blood and calculation. He'd built this empire by being smart, by knowing when to fight and when to negotiate. Going after Pierce violated every strategic instinct he had. He thought about his mother, about finding her body when he was 12, his stepfather already gone, the police report that called it an accident, about his sister Nadia, who hadn't spoken in 20 years, who lived in a facility upstate, trapped in the moment she'd watched their mother die. Set up a meeting with the nurse, Riker said. Tonight. They met in a closed restaurant in Red Hook that Riker used for conversations that needed privacy. Kira arrived 20 minutes late, still in her scrubs, exhaustion written across her face. She slid into the booth across from him, and for a moment neither spoke. You're different than I expected, Kira said finally. What did you expect? More tattoos. Maybe a scar or two. You look like you could be running a hedge fund. I do run several investment firms. The other business is just supplementary. Riker signaled for coffee. We need to talk about Judge Pierce. Kira's expression hardened. Catherine came back yesterday. More bruises. Said she walked into a door. I documented everything, took photos. She wouldn't let me call the police. Because Pierce is the police. He's the courts. He's the system. Riker pulled out his file. This isn't like the others. We can't scare him into leaving town. We can't plant evidence for an arrest. He has too many friends who'd make it disappear. And if we make him vanish, every federal agency in the state will investigate. So we do nothing. Kira's voice rose. We just let him keep destroying people. I didn't say that. I said we have to be smart. Riker opened the file, spreading documents across the table. Pierce isn't just abusive. He's corrupt. He takes money to rule certain ways. He has relationships with lawyers who bring him cases. There's a pattern, but it's buried under years of careful legal maneuvering. What do you need? Evidence. Real evidence. Not just of him beating his wife. That alone won't stick. We need to prove the corruption, show the pattern of rulings, connect the money. Build a case so solid that even his powerful friends can't make it disappear. Kira studied the documents. This could take months. Or days if we have someone on the inside. Riker looked at her directly. You said Catherine came back yesterday. Did she seem ready to run? She seemed hopeless. Like she'd given up. What if she had a reason to hope? What if we could offer her real protection and a way to destroy him permanently? She won't testify. I already tried. Not testimony. Documentation. Pierce keeps records. He's meticulous. Bank accounts, communications with the lawyers bribing him, maybe even evidence of his pattern with other victims. If Catherine can access his home office, get us copies. You're asking her to spy on a violent man who's already broken her bones multiple times. Kira's hands tightened around her coffee cup. If he catches her, then we make sure he doesn't catch her. We give her a way out. A safe house, new identity, money, protection. But first, we need leverage. This is insane. This is the only way. Riker's voice was calm but intense. Every other option either fails to stop him or brings down federal investigation on everyone involved, including you. In case you've forgotten, you're technically an accomplice to multiple felonies. Kira flinched but didn't look away. When I sent you that first name, I thought it would be simple. Bad man does bad thing. Bad man faces consequences. I didn't think about judges with power or federal investigations or putting victims in more danger. Nothing about this is simple. It never was. Riker finished his coffee. But here's what I know. If we do nothing, Pierce keeps destroying lives. If we try to handle him like the others, we fail and possibly destroy everything we've built. Or we take the risk, get the evidence, and expose him in a way that even his friends can't protect him from. And if Catherine says no, then we find another way. But we have to try. 3 days later, Kira sat across from Catherine Pierce in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the hospital. Catherine had agreed to meet after Kira called saying she had resources that could help. She looked smaller than she had in the ER, wearing long sleeves despite the heat, moving carefully like everything hurt. I don't understand what you want from me, Catherine said quietly. I want to help you get away from your husband. Permanently. Safely. In a way where he can never touch you again. Catherine laughed, a bitter sound. There is no safe. Raymond knows everyone. He has judges, police, politicians. I tried to leave twice. Both times he made it impossible. Froze my accounts, turned my friends against me, threatened my sister's family. He told me if I ever tried again, he'd have me declared mentally incompetent and lock me away somewhere. What if you could destroy him instead of just leaving? Kira leaned forward. What if there was a way to expose him, not just for what he does to you, but for everything? The corruption, the other women he's hurt through his courtroom, all of it. Even if I wanted to, I don't have proof. But he does. He keeps records. You've seen his office. Catherine went very still. You want me to steal from him? I want you to document what he's hidden. We have people who can help, who can keep you safe while you do it, who can get you out the moment you have what we need. And if he catches me before I get out, Kira had no good answer for that. Then we'll come get you. But Catherine, if you do nothing, this continues. For you, for his next victim, for every woman who walks into his courtroom, hoping for justice, and gets him instead. Catherine stared into her coffee for a long moment. When she looked up, something had shifted in her expression. Not hope exactly, but something harder. Anger, maybe, but just exhaustion with being afraid. What do you need me to do? Over the next 2 weeks, Catherine became a spy in her own home. Pierce worked late most nights, leaving her alone with his locked office. The first time she picked the lock, using tools Riker's people had taught her to use, her hand shook so badly she nearly gave up. But she thought about the women whose faces she'd seen in court transcripts, the cases where Pierce had sided with abusers, the children awarded to violent parents. She thought about the last 20 years of her life, lived in fear of a man who smiled for cameras while breaking her bones in private. She photographed everything. Bank statements showing payments from lawyers. Emails coordinating decisions before cases were even heard. A handwritten ledger. Pierce's insurance policy, documenting every bribe, every fixed case, every favor owed. He kept it all because powerful men always think they're untouchable. The breakthrough came on a Friday night. Pierce had a dinner with the police commissioner, would be gone for hours. Catherine accessed his computer, bypassed the password using software Riker's tech person had installed remotely, and found the motherlode. Video files. Dozens of them. Pierce had been recording his sessions with Catherine, documenting his violence like trophies. But he'd also recorded conversations with other abusers, discussing how to manipulate court proceedings, how to destroy victims' credibility. Catherine copied everything to an encrypted drive, her stomach churning as she watched pieces of her own nightmare play out on screen. When she was done, she reset everything to look untouched and went upstairs to pack the bag she'd been hiding in her closet for 2 weeks. She was almost at the front door when she heard the car in the driveway. Pierce was home early. Catherine's heart stopped. The drive was in her pocket. Her escape bag was by the door. If he found either, he'd know. She ran upstairs, threw the bag in the closet, and was in the bathroom washing her face when she heard him come in. "Catherine." His voice carried up the stairs, genial and terrifying. "I'm home early. The commissioner had food poisoning, canceled dinner. Let's watch a movie, spend some time together." It was a test. He did this sometimes, came home unexpected, checked her routine, looked for signs she was planning something. Catherine forced herself to breathe normally as she walked downstairs. Pierce was standing in the hallway, still in his suit, watching her with eyes that never quite looked human. "Were you going somewhere?" He nodded at her coat, which she'd left draped over the banister in her panic. "Just cold. The house gets drafty." He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Come sit with me. I want to talk about something." They sat in the living room. Pierce poured wine she didn't drink. He talked about his day, about a case he was proud of, about plans for their anniversary next month. All the while, he watched her with that calculating expression, like he was solving a puzzle. "You seem nervous," he said finally. "I'm fine. Are you?" "Because I got an interesting phone call today. Someone asking questions about my court record, about patterns in my rulings." He set down his wine glass. It made me wonder, who would be looking into that? Who would even know to look? Catherine's blood turned to ice. Pierce stood and walked to his office. Catherine heard the door open, heard him moving around. Every second felt like an hour. Then he came back, his expression dark. "My office was accessed. Files were moved. Someone's been in there." He grabbed Catherine by the throat, lifting her half off the couch. "Was it you?" She couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Pierce's grip tightened, and for a moment she was sure he'd kill her right there. Then her phone rang. Pierce dropped her, grabbed her phone from the coffee table. Unknown number. He answered, putting it on speaker. "Catherine, it's time to go." Riker's voice, calm and commanding. "Walk out the front door. Right now. There are people waiting." Pierce's face went white. "Who the fuck is this?" "Someone who's done watching you destroy lives." "Catherine, move. Now." Catherine ran. Pierce tried to grab her, but she was already at the door, already outside where 2 black SUVs sat with engines running. Hands pulled her into the first vehicle. She caught a glimpse of Pierce in the doorway, phone still in his hand, screaming something she couldn't hear over the sound of her own heartbeat. The SUV peeled away into the night, and for the first time in 20 years, Catherine Pierce was free. The safe house was a converted loft in Williamsburg that didn't appear on any property records. Catherine sat on a leather couch, wrapped in a blanket despite the heat, still shaking from adrenaline. Riker stood by the window with his phone, coordinating something in quiet, clipped sentences. Kira sat beside Catherine, checking her neck where Pierce's fingers had left angry red marks. "He knows," Catherine whispered. "He knows I took the files. He'll come after me. He'll use every connection he has to find me." "Let him try," Riker said, ending his call. "We're 3 steps ahead." The moment you walked out that door, encrypted copies of everything you found went to 3 different news outlets and 4 separate law enforcement agencies. Not local, federal. People Pierce can't touch. You don't understand what he's capable of. I understand exactly what he's capable of. I also understand that by morning, his entire world collapses. Riker pulled up his laptop, turned it so Catherine could see. "This is the evidence package being reviewed right now. Bank records showing $200,000 in bribes over 3 years. Email chains coordinating fixed rulings. That ledger documenting every corrupt decision. And the videos." Catherine looked away from the screen. "I can't watch those." "You don't have to. But prosecutors will. Juries will. And when they do, Pierce doesn't just lose his judgeship. He goes to prison for a very long time." Kira's phone buzzed. "Detective Chun." She stepped away to answer. "It's 2 in the morning. "I know. Listen, I just got pulled into an emergency meeting with the FBI. Someone dumped a nuclear bomb worth of evidence on Judge Pierce. They're moving fast. Warrants being drafted, arrest team assembling. This is really happening. How long until they pick him up? 6 hours, maybe less. But Kira, there's something you need to know. Pierce figured out someone's been helping his victims. He doesn't have names yet, but he's connected enough dots to be dangerous. You need to be careful. Kira looked at Catherine, at Riker coordinating security through his phone. We're already ahead of him. Good. Because men like Pierce don't go down quietly. He's going to burn everything trying to save himself. Chen paused. The evidence you provided, Catherine's photos, the files, they're ironclad. But I need you to keep her safe until we have him in custody. Can you do that? Yes. Then I'll see you on the other side of this. Chen hung up. Dawn was breaking over Brooklyn when the news hit. Every major outlet ran the same story. Judge Raymond Pierce arrested on corruption charges, evidence of systemic abuse of power, videos showing domestic violence spanning years. His face was everywhere. The golden boy of the judiciary revealed as a monster who'd weaponized the law to protect himself and men like him. By 8 a.m., Pierce was in federal custody. By 9, 3 more judges had been suspended pending investigation into cases Pierce had referred to them. By 10, a hotline for his victims had been established, and the calls were flooding in. Women he destroyed in court, men he'd helped abuse their families, lawyers he'd taken bribes from. Everyone suddenly willing to talk now that the monster was caged. Catherine watched it all from the safe house, tears streaming down her face. Not relief yet, but something close. The beginning of belief that she might actually be free. What happens now? She asked Kira. Now you rebuild. The legal team Riker hired will handle your divorce, your safety, everything. Pierce won't be able to touch you. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison if the prosecutors do their job. And you? What happens to you? Kira hadn't thought that far ahead. She'd been operating on rage and momentum for weeks, sending names, watching abusers disappear, telling herself she was helping. She hadn't considered what came after. I go back to work, she said finally. Keep doing what I do. Saving people. Trying to. Riker walked over, pocketing his phone. Catherine, there's someone here to see you. A woman in her 60s entered, eyes red from crying. Catherine gasped. Mom. They embraced, both sobbing. Catherine's mother had been one of the people Pierce had isolated her from, using threats and manipulation to sever every support system. Riker had located her that morning, explained everything, brought her here to reunite with the daughter she'd thought was lost. Kira stepped back, giving them privacy. Riker gestured for her to follow him to the kitchen area. This is the part where you tell me this can't continue, Kira said. Actually, I'm telling you it has to evolve. Riker poured coffee, handed her a cup. Pierce was high profile. His arrest will spark investigations, congressional hearings, reforms. Which means the system might actually start working for the next few months. Our services won't be as necessary. That's good, isn't it? It is. But it's also temporary. The system always reverts. The powerful always find ways to protect themselves. And there will always be men like Pierce who slip through the cracks. Riker looked at her seriously. What we've been doing isn't sustainable long-term. It's messy, illegal, and dangerous. But it's also revealed something important. What? That there are people willing to do what's necessary when the system fails. You, me, Detective Chun, even Catherine. We're not heroes. We're just people who decided that watching wasn't enough. He set down his coffee. So here's what I'm proposing. We legitimize part of this. Create a foundation that helps domestic violence victims. Legal support, safe housing, relocation assistance. Everything above board. Use my money, your medical expertise, Chen's law enforcement connections. And the other part? The part that's not legitimate. Stays in the shadows. Reserved for the cases that can't be handled legally. The powerful abusers, the corrupt officials, the ones who think they're untouchable. Riker's expression was hard. But we get smarter about it. More careful. More strategic. No more spontaneous decisions. Every case gets evaluated, every risk assessed. Kira thought about the past month. About Jenna, healing and safe. About Catherine, free after 20 years. About the dozens of women who weren't coming to her ER anymore because the men who hurt them were gone. She thought about her mother, about the funeral, about 17-year-old Kira standing in the rain watching them lower a casket while her father pretended to cry. I'm in, she said, but I have conditions. Name them. No killing unless absolutely necessary. We try every legal option first. And if we do have to go dark, we make sure the victims are protected and willing participants, not pawns we're moving around. Riker extended his hand. Agreed. They shook on it, two damaged people forming a partnership that would operate in the gray spaces where the law ended and justice began. 6 months later, the Grave Foundation opened its doors in downtown Brooklyn. The building was modern, secure, with 24-hour security and services that range from legal consultation to therapy to job training. Catherine Pierce ran the day-to-day operations, using her legal background to help victims navigate the system that had failed her. Detective Chun served as a consultant, steering cases toward legitimate prosecution when possible. And Kira continued her ER shifts, still documenting injuries, still seeing the patterns, but now with resources to actually help. The foundation helped 300 women in its first year. 97 successfully left their abusers. 42 saw their attackers prosecuted and convicted. 12 cases required the kind of help that wasn't advertised on the foundation's website, the kind that Riker handled personally, making problems disappear through methods that couldn't be discussed in polite company. Brooklyn's domestic violence statistics dropped by 30%. The media attributed it to increased awareness and better resources. Law enforcement credited more aggressive prosecution. The truth was more complicated, darker, and infinitely more effective. On a Tuesday night, 18 months after everything started, Kira was finishing her shift when a young woman approached the nurse's station. Maybe 25, with fresh bruises barely hidden by makeup, and that look Kira had learned to recognize instantly. The look of someone who'd been surviving violence so long they'd forgotten what living felt like. "I need help," the woman said quietly. "Not just medical. Real help. Someone told me. Someone said I should ask for Nurse Ross." Kira led her to a private exam room and documented her injuries: broken ribs, cigarette burns, a concussion that should have been treated days ago. The story was familiar. Boyfriend who started out charming and slowly became controlling. Isolation from friends and family. Escalating violence that she'd convinced herself was somehow her fault. "Do you have somewhere safe to go?" Kira asked. The woman shook her head, tears finally breaking through. "He's everywhere. He tracks my phone, my car, everything. If I leave, he'll find me. And if he finds me..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Kira pulled out a card, official, legitimate, with the Graves Foundation logo and address. "Go to this place tomorrow morning. Tell them I sent you. They'll help you disappear safely, legally. New identity, if necessary, protection, everything you need to start over." "What about him? What about him?" "He'll just do this to someone else. He'll find another woman and..." "That's not going to happen." Kira's voice was calm, certain. "Trust me, by the time you're safe, he'll have other problems to worry about." The woman left clutching the card like a lifeline. Kira pulled out her phone and sent a message to a number only 3 people had. "New case. High risk. Sending details now." The response came back immediately. "Received. We'll handle it." Kira finished her shift and walked out into the Brooklyn dawn. The city was waking up around her, delivery trucks rumbling past, early commuters heading to the subway, the endless rhythm of life in motion. Somewhere in this city, a woman was planning her escape. Somewhere else, a man was about to learn that the rules had changed, that violence had consequences, that being powerful didn't mean being untouchable. The system was still broken. The laws still failed more often than they succeeded. But in the spaces between legal and illegal, between justice and revenge, between the way things were and the way they should be, a small group of people had decided to make a difference the only way they knew how. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't clean, and it definitely wasn't legal. But when Kira thought about Jenna's healing smile, Catherine's freedom, the 300 women who'd rebuilt their lives, and the countless others who'd never know how close they'd come to becoming statistics, she knew it was worth it. Because some things hurt too much to watch and do nothing. And some people, when they finally stop watching and start acting, change everything. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments. Sometimes the system fails. Sometimes justice needs help. And sometimes the most dangerous partnerships are the ones that save the most lives. Thanks for watching, and remember, if you or someone you know needs help, there are resources available. You don't have to survive alone.